Hello and welcome to WWJPS. I am your host, Vanessa Pinto, and we are going to be discussing the American struggle with money. We're going to be talking about now that the Strait of Hormuz closed, but essentially we're going to continue to look at the American struggle that is current and how people are feeling.
Telling people it is okay to work 3 jobs, not see your kids, not see your loved ones, not take a vacation, and God forbid you get sick. Okay? And I still got a job at home because I'm a mother. Because let's not forget, I don't get a day off. And I got to figure all that out. How are we going to eat? How are we going to pay rent? How are we going to pay the utility bills? That every single thing went up after COVID. Not one thing stayed the same except salaries. The only thing that stayed the same in this country is the minimum wage. Even though everything else went up. There is no scarcity. It is, how do we...
She's not wrong. The federal minimum wage is still $7.25. Right now, people are lucky to get $20 an hour out the door. And for jobs that we're paying quite higher, they're nickel and diming us because everybody needs a job right now. Americans are at the mercy of everyone.
People against each other, so they're too distracted to see everything that I'm too addicted to consuming. And how much profit I'm making, and more profit, how many more houses one individual can have, how many yachts can one individual have. And you're going to arrest me now that I make a tent city? Yeah. So if I take the scraps from the trash and make some kind of shelter for me and my children, regardless whether I have mental health issues, regardless whether I'm an addict, regardless of whether I am a female, male.
This woman, one, you can totally empathize with her, but she's absolutely right. Why is it that, one, you're completely priced out, but you have no options? And in America, we love to use that, well, we're not a socialist country, we don't help people. And yet in other countries, they do. And guess what? They don't have the homeless issue we have here. They don't have people starving from lack of food. They don't have people dying because they don't have health insurance. In other countries, yeah, you pay more taxes, but you actually get it back for yourself. You get free health insurance. You also don't pay for college. Here you are nickel and dime for every cent. And now, since COVID is over and that experiment went well, now we have a war in Iran. The petrodollar is crashing. AI is taking over. People are losing their jobs by the bucket full. And now America's saying you get absolutely no help and you should like it that way.
Then just keep on scrolling. But I just went up to my gas station to get gas in my car, and there were the yellow bags over the pump, so I walked inside. I'm friends with the owner, and I said, what's going on with gas? Kind of assuming already that things are getting shut down. And she said, basically, she's an Indian lady, but the sweetest lady in the world. And she said, basically, she's not allowed to say anything, but she's not expecting to get gas. And she doesn't have an update on when she's going to get trucks to fill up her tanks again. Tell me this shit is not wild. I went a mile down the road and got some gas at a different gas station, but there were bags over a couple of the pumps.
This isn't just about prices going up, and I know that that's bad enough, but people are not taking into consideration the fact that we are at war with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And unfortunately, we live in a country where people are so beaten down. I would fare to guess that a good portion of this country doesn't even understand what's about to happen and how important that strait is, because we're not just talking about prices going up, we're talking about starvation.
This is, I guarantee you, me, everybody in America, the gas supply is about to be cut off. I guarantee it. I guarantee there are going to be such major shortages coming this week, next week, and the following, followed by extremely high gas prices.
And also, what you have to understand is this is being done on purpose. America is not supposed to succeed here, all right? Because remember, we're in this war for Israel, all right? So we're doing Israel's bidding. This country, and especially with the people running it, they are just attempting to sort of, one, with Iran, it's crushing the petrodollar. And essentially, that's what's going to happen. Because once people cannot get these boats through, it will impact us to a point that people don't understand. So I'm going to put someone on who can actually explain it far better than me. Now we're going to let the professionals speak.
There's been lots of coverage on it, and I think some people have kind of skipped past the importance of the region. Yeah. What is the Strait of Hormuz and why does it matter?
Well, it's the choke point in the Persian Gulf. To get through, you've got like 21 kilometres. That's an incredibly narrow gap for ships to pass through. And that means that all the countries that pump not just oil, but fertiliser, helium, all these critical elements for the production system all have to pass through this point. And obviously that's well within reach of any weapons from Iran. So they can say, you do or do not pass, depending on whether we approve or don't approve.
Like, you do understand this is why the world is so pissed off. This doesn't just affect us and prices. What did he just say? Fertilizer, helium, natural resources and minerals. This is much bigger than what our government is telling us, which is, again, why no one should be watching the mainstream media news.
Approve of your country's attitude towards our country.
You said fertilizer?
Yeah.
Oil and helium?
Yeah, helium.
Where are they coming from?
They're mainly coming from, I think, mainly from the Saudi Arabian side.
Okay.
Saudi Arabian, like Iran will have the same things, but Iran will keep those for themselves. But Saudi Arabia is the main source of gases and oils which are refined and as byproducts. That is a riot. Okay.
Where is helium coming from?
It's coming from a gas field. So about 30% of the world's helium comes from a gas field which spans both Saudi Arabia and Iran. If you don't trap helium physically somehow, it goes to outer space. That's the ultimate destination of the stuff. So it's trapped in the same things that trap oil. And then when you drill for oil, you also get helium coming out. And then helium is absolutely critical for the semiconductor industry. It didn't matter 100 years ago.
And semiconductors are important for what?
Everything. I mean, you take the semiconductors out of that, you've got a brick. Okay? The processors, the CPUs, the memory chips.
So all of those things, helium is what makes our phones work. Let's make it that simple. All of the things that make our life infinitely easier and that we absolutely depend on this strait brings to us. And it's closed, folks.
They're all made. Helium is an essential element to make them.
For our iPhones, our tablets, our devices.
Everything electronic. If you need semiconductors, you need helium. So if you cut off 30% of the world's helium supply, you cut off the capacity to produce 30% of the world's semiconductors.
And Iran have blocked that gap.
And that means that we've suddenly lost 30% of the world's helium.
I've got a quote from March 2026 from leading helium expert Phil Kornbluch. He said, we're looking at a minimum 2 to 3 months shutdown of helium production with up to 6 months before supply gets back to normal. And he explained you can't stockpile helium because it leaks through containers.
Yep.
So once supply is cut off, semiconductor production will stop entirely. South Korea gets 65% of its helium from Qatar in that region and makes 2/3 of the world's memory chips. Their government has launched an emergency investigation into the shortage. Nobody's talking about this.
Because people are just thinking oil's going to be more expensive. That's the sort of mindset we have. But in fact, critical elements of the production system are being terminated by this conflict. You can't produce chips anymore, and you can't produce these chips either because the fertilizer's disappearing.
So you're holding a potato in your hand.
Yeah.
How are potato chips going to be impacted by the war?
Because of fertilizer. If we don't have the fertilizer, we can't grow the potatoes. And it's not just potatoes, it's a whole range of crops. We eat food, okay? We eat this green stuff. It actually starts as brown stuff because the fertilizer is an essential part of growing all the food we eat. And the fertilizer is produced by a process called the Haber-Bosch process, which takes petroleum and nitrogen and fixes them in such a way that you can put this on the field and your plants will grow courtesy of the fertilizer. If we didn't have fertilizer at all.
So folks, this is what I mean when I say I made this video today, not so much to talk about rising costs, but this is beyond rising costs. We're getting to shortage, and then past shortage, scarcity, complete scarcity of gas, of products, of food. So if the grocery stores run out of food and there's no fertilizer to grow it, where does it come from? Where does it come from?
Helium, sulfuric acid, all pass through that Strait. And if you take them away, then you can't make microchips, which is what Korea is suffering from. You can't make fertilizer, which everybody will suffer from. If we lost 20% of the world's fertilizer, we'd lose roughly 20% of the world's food. And it caused a global famine. We've never had this experience before.
We are looking at a global famine, folks. This is a bit bigger than COVID. And COVID just prepared us for having to prepare to survive, because God knows our government isn't helping us. They're not even letting you know that this is an issue. For the most part, all they're defending are gas prices. But let me ask you, how many of you actually knew that helium and also fertilizer and also trace minerals and all of these other things were going to be affected, and that perhaps we are going to be dealing with a famine and no one moving? And also, who's to say they don't decide to restrict our movement? Now, if you actually listen to what the Republicans and Trump say, this is really the fault of the poor, right? That this is a reaction to that. But it's not at all.
Biggest myths Trump and Republicans in Congress perpetrate is that low-income Americans don't pay their fair share of taxes. In reality, the opposite is true. Poor Americans pay a huge amount in taxes, while some of the wealthiest Americans and the most profitable corporations pay little to nothing.
And due to that big, beautiful bill that we have all had it waved in our faces, which took away our health care, now the people that make the most amount of money paid nothing. Palantir, Meta, all those people paid nothing. And how many Americans are crippled with debt right now?
Here are the facts. The federal income tax is progressive, meaning that as your income rises, a larger share of your income is supposed to be taxed. But the federal income tax is only one of many taxes that Americans pay. Taking into account all taxes, Social Security, Medicare, state and local sales taxes, local property taxes, user fees, tolls, those in the bottom fifth of earners pay almost a fifth of their incomes in taxes. Even the poorest Americans are paying almost 11% of their income in state and local taxes alone, according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. This amounts to a much larger sacrifice than what the wealthy pay. Meanwhile, the wealthiest Americans have found ways to reduce their federal tax bills by exploiting loopholes, like the carried interest deduction for hedge fund managers, real estate developers, and private equity.
The corporations have all the money, right? They intend to keep it that way. So they nickel and dime us to death, all of these fees. And again, we have a government that doesn't want to regulate them because they are padding the pockets of our politicians to keep them corrupt. How many people are losing their homes? How many people are filing for bankruptcy? So it's a bit more than they say.
Is highlighting the economic toll of current policies, with 3,200 employees losing their jobs. In a shocking move, Tyson Foods, the largest meat producer in the U.S., has announced the closure of its Nebraska plant, a decision attributed to rising cattle costs caused by tariffs under the Trump administration. Of just 11,000 people without work, many of whom are believed to have supported the current administration. The impact doesn't end there. Tyson's Texas facility will also see major cuts, with their 3-shift operation reduced to just one, meaning further layoffs are expected. As large industries like Tyson are affected, the ripple effect is felt by local businesses.
Now, look at this. This is a huge job, because let's look at our factory jobs. We've got the meat plants, the chicken, poultry plants, the pork plants, then there's the others. But essentially, then we've got cars. I don't even know if we make that many cars in this country. But our factory jobs are dwindling. And now one of our biggest companies who hires people and think factory jobs means you don't have a college education, so anyone can do it, right? We're going back to that blue collar level. So they don't have jobs either. And again, this isn't because the corporations are losing money and they're having all this problem, because I remember back in the day when it was shameful for a company to lay off their employees. That meant that you were not doing your job because you had to fire all these people and look shameful. Now they don't care. Basically, right now what's happening is they expect AI to replace all of this labor. All the job losses that we're seeing, and it's not just in factories, receptionists, paralegals, all of these things that they don't think they need people anymore. So they're just firing them. And they're not giving us any assistance at all.
It's completely devastating. This is a town of about 11,000 people, and 3,200 are losing their jobs on January 20th when the plant that you see behind me closes. I talked to one worker who said that this was like dropping a bomb in the middle of this town.
And so what happens? Because every time America loses jobs, they just give you someone to blame. It's the immigrants, it's DEI, it's all of these things, right? It's not. Not only are they taking all of our jobs, but they're not replacing them. And Americans aren't saying, hey, just give us money. We're a bunch of deadbeats. Americans are one of the hardest working countries. We work to death because we have to, or we do not survive. And now what you're saying is we don't even have the opportunity to work, to make a living in this already egregiously outpriced country.
Other idea, stop the fucking war that nobody in America wants.
When oil prices go up, so does food and almost everything else that is shipped on a truck. Oil prices will be determined starting on Sunday night, and oil and gas prices will go up. It will also affect your utilities. So the cost of goods, the cost of living is about to go up even further. If you didn't know, inflation was at 3%. Yeah, it was at 3%. It went up again. We lost over 1.2 million jobs in 2025. We lost 600,000 jobs in January. So rising fuel prices and food prices again, when there are almost 9 million Americans out of work, when 60% of companies plan on laying off in the USA, is going to be catastrophic. And don't forget, we have cut all social programs to help with higher cost and people who have lost their jobs, but you're still paying the same taxes. Well, where is that money going? Well, Republicans are in power, everyone. Of course, it's going to war. It's going to law enforcement. I hope that your mortgage company and the grocery store will be okay with you not being able to pay your bills. 10 out of 11 of the last recessions have been under Republican presidents. And by the way, this attack will cost us billions of dollars, billions, and cost of lives. Not mine. My family's already served. So
now this woman, I believe she's an economist, or she does this for a living, but she's basically spent a good portion of Trump's presidency alerting people. So the information is out there, but as Americans, are we really looking? Or are you still turning on CNN and believing what they're telling you because they're lying?
Is shouting at politicians blaming the current administration or comparing it to the last one. But the reality is so much bigger and honestly a lot more complicated than a single person sitting in an office. We've got experts and industry insiders pointing out that gas could easily hit $7 to $10 a gallon by midsummer. Why? Because oil is a global market. If a shipping lane like the Strait of Hormuz is compromised, or ships have to take a 2-week detour around the globe, insurance skyrockets.
Ooh, a 2-week detour. Oh my God, how expensive is that going to get for us? And so, those Republican politicians that all of you people have voted for because you thought that they were fiscally responsible, and now you realize they have gutted all hope from you. They took your medical insurance, okay? They have stripped you of all social programs. And I'm talking about the people who are getting them, because I'm not talking about fraud. There is no fraud. The fraud is the government and the corporations. And what I love is that Americans still want to blame each other for the social programs. It is not. This is finally when America is saying, you know what? We never wanted to give you a goddamn thing. And now we can finally do it. And that's where Republicans are. They are going to strip everything. On top of it, they're loosening regulations because they're also getting their pockets filled and bribed by all of these. For God's sake, Trump took Elon Musk, Tim Cook, all the AI dudes to China. That's who runs our country, not Americans. And people really need to pay attention to that. He has told us. How many times does that man need to tell you? He doesn't give a shit about America.
One of the many Americans struggling with homelessness. I live in a vehicle that was made in 1996. I live on the side of the road, and I live in parking lots from time to time. When I can, I stay at campground, but this was obviously not my first choice. So
now, she's lucky to have this camper. She's lucky. She has a roof, and she's able to find a place to park, because now all the corporations are coming for those too, and the states are making sure you can't park overnight. They are making it damn near impossible to be homeless. And if you are homeless, they're going to throw you in fucking jail for it.
Living. At the time I became homeless, I was 22. My grandma had just passed away. I had applied to 6 different apartments, and I got denied at every place because I didn't have renter's history or credit yet. Because like I said, at the time I was 22, I never rented before, and I never built credit. So after being denied multiple times, I did have to stay in motels, and my money was going fast on nights at motels. Plus, the motels weren't super clean or safe, and I have 2 cats. Well, I have 3 cats, but at the time when I first became homeless, I did have 2 cats. Now, the answer that you want, I have. You're wondering why they are doing this, and you're wondering why we are not fighting back. Slavery never stopped, it just evolved. The government requires you to be a slave to them in order to rent an apartment. You could have money, you could have...
Now, that used to be the case, because think about it. How many of us were robbing Peter to pay Paul to pay our rent? Now you can't even do that. Now even working as a slave, like she said, even that doesn't guarantee you a roof. So when everything else fails, like she's saying, why aren't we fighting back? Why isn't there revolution?
For example, $10,000 cash, but you still will not be able to get a place to live unless you have proof that you have been a slave to the system, pay stubs, bank statements, proof that you work a certain amount of hours. If you are not making money for the government, then they don't want you. They don't want to help you, and they see you as a burden. The system is set up for rich families. If I had a cosigner, I would be able to get a place to live, but I had no family or friends to cosign for me, so I've just been navigating this kind of by myself, and I spent my life safe.
And for the longest times, Americans bought the whole, oh, well, she just needs to be working harder. She just needs to be working harder. Now when they're seeing people with full-time jobs and good jobs having to move into their cars, all of a sudden people are going, wait a minute, I've worked as hard. Why can't even I get ahead? What is going on?
Department of Housing. Homelessness is officially worse than during the global financial crisis, with baby boomers becoming homeless at the fastest rate since the Great Depression. And while individuals sleeping in vehicles have more than doubled since 2019, billionaire net worth rose by 81%, controlling more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. Raising the question, when did forced homelessness become the nation's business model? Despite the United States facing the most expensive housing market in history, with cities like San Francisco charging...
And that's exactly right. It's forced homelessness. This is being done on purpose. This does not have to be done. A lot of these corporations buy up the houses and they're empty. They are doing this on purpose, and it's because they want us desperate, because they want to slide in universal income and global ID and make us a slave. What do you think those data centers are for? They want you. It's no longer enough that you work to death. Now they want to own every part of you, know what you're thinking, know what you're doing when you're sleeping, to give you a small stipend, and then they get to decide what you get to do.
$700 a month for a 4-foot tall sleeping pod, the top 0.1% still controls enough wealth to purchase every home across the nation's 25 largest metro areas without going into debt, proving that what is framed as a housing shortage is actually a market that has been deliberately reshaped to extract as much value as possible from a basic human necessity, reinforcing the idea that you will own nothing and be forced to be happy about it. While the lead up to the 2008 financial crisis saw home prices more than double, median monthly rent only gradually increased alongside both inflation and income growth, allowing renters to spend around 25 to 30% of their income on housing and maintain a difficult but still achievable path towards home ownership, or at the very least, a stable way to keep a roof over one's head. However, as a result of tens of thousands of small and regional builders becoming bankrupt or absorbed during the recession, and institutional investors coming to dominate as much as 57 to 75% of single-family rentals in certain neighborhoods, both the construction and ownership sides of the housing market are now increasingly controlled by a small number of firms. Today, the top 10 builders capture nearly 45% of all new single-family home closings, the highest share ever recorded.
How do Americans have a chance? I mean, as you listen to this, the odds are completely stacked against us, and it's never been like this. It's always been hard in this country. But I hope that people are waking up to the fact that there is no fix here. The government is not coming to help us. Americans need to figure this out. And I know that everyone thinks it's this November race, and it's not, folks. I'm going to end by having you guys listen to two politicians. We're going to start with James Talrico.
Are trying to raise premiums on some Americans, that will end up raising premiums on all of us. Right now, they're cutting food assistance for hungry kids and working parents. That's going to end up raising grocery prices for all of us. And so they may think that they're just attacking some Americans, but in fact, they're attacking all Americans.
I want to focus on the religious aspect, because
Sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
Have a very Christian background.
Yeah.
But if you look at major religions, including Christianity, it is not a focus on a political system. It's a focus on individual responsibility. And when the political system takes away the individual responsibility and says, don't worry, the government's going to take care of you, you are absolutely going to catch people who need that. And it's a
Before I let that very intelligent man answer, because his answer is by far superior, this is still what America thinks is robbing its pocket. This man right here is doing the all people on welfare, people on food stamps. They're just getting a handout. No one's working. That is not true. Because think about it. They've stripped that all away and it's still not getting easier. So perhaps the answer is not that there are a few people taking advantage of the system. That just doesn't make sense. And these people believe it.
stand up and it helps them. But you're also going to take away from the individual responsibility, which is needed to get out of those situations. So when you talk about food stamps and healthcare and helping, how do you balance that? Because I haven't heard a good democratic argument of, great, let's help people, but how are you? There are nasty people. There are welfare queens. There are nasty people who take advantage of the system and take away from those who earned it, take away from those who need it. So how are you going to take that into account? How are you going to make sure we cover that risk as well?
The biggest welfare queens in this country are the giant corporations that don't pay a penny in federal taxes. The biggest welfare queens are the CEO.
And that man was hoping he had a white man across from him and he was going to blame, the minorities. And no, this man is telling the truth. This man is absolutely telling, because how does it make sense that the people that have the most money pay no taxes? They are increasing all of our prices, kicking us out of our homes, minimizing our wages. But we're the problem?
Those who get a tax deduction for flying on a private jet. It's not hungry kids. It's not working parents who work multiple jobs to provide for their families. I agree with you that we need individual responsibility. And I don't want to create a culture of dependency. I want a hand up and not a handout. I believe that you don't give a man to fish, you teach a man to fish. But if you're going to take your friend out on a boat for the day to teach him how to fish, you want to make sure he had breakfast that morning. You want to make sure he's not sick, because that allows him to learn how to fish. Again, I was a public school teacher, so I saw how when kids showed up hungry, they couldn't learn that day. Even my brightest students, even my hardest work.
Because they took away kids' hot meals. For the kids whose parents don't have a lot of money and maybe who don't even have food at home, they took it because, we can't spend that. America doesn't have any money. The politician, Mr. Talrico, who just spoke, that's who we need to elect. By the way, he doesn't take AIPAC. People like him, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna, those are the ones you want. The ones that aren't bought and paid, and the ones that see the system for what it is, and they know that until we change it and until things are made more equal, nothing will ever happen in this country, and this country is doomed. So I'm going to end the word from our wise president.
Americans' financial situation.
Mr. President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think...
Not even a little bit. And he doubled down, by the way, when they asked him later, and it was one of his own Fox regime news reporters who were like, maybe you misspoke. Nope, didn't misspoke. I don't care. And you know what? If they're so upset about it, oh well, they'll get over it.
About Americans' financial situation, I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran...
I think about one thing, how much I need to lick Bibi Netanyahu's fucking ass, and how blackmailed I am by the state of Israel. Folks, if we do not unite as Americans and stop blaming one another, God help us all.